Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth Podcast. I'm your host, Wade Borth, and in every episode, my goal is to get you to think differently about how money works and ultimately to empower you to take control of your money and your personal financing system. Hello, welcome back to the Wade Borth Podcast. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about a lesson Nelson was trying to teach us in his book, Becoming Your Own Banker, The Infinite Banking Strategy. And that lesson is having money flow back to an entity that you own and control. That conversation has been, a lot of times people don't get that. And sometimes it's even hard for practitioners to get and understand what that means. So let me just take you through a couple examples. Let's take you back to a little bit more along the lines of what does that really mean? So if you think about it, most people in this country, in the United States, if they want something, let's say it's a car, and we're going to use a car just because that's the easiest example that a lot of people buy, or most people will buy, is a car. And so we go out and we purchase a car. All right, so we make that purchase. We go to the bank, we borrow their money, or somebody else's money that they're just the intermediary of, and we take that money and we go make that purchase, and then we pay back that money to the bank. Well, we understand that the cost of that is the interest, and then also the cost of that is the value of that dollar. Those dollars we could have used somewhere else. And so the bank understands that, so they charge us interest on that. And so they're ultimately in control of that process because our money is flowing to their institution. So just think about that for 1 second. Our money is flowing to their institution. So then what's the next best idea? People are like, well, I'm not going to finance a car. I'm going to go and I'm going to save money and I'm going to pay cash. What they don't realize, the part that they're really missing, is they are still financing that car. Although they're not paying the bank interest, they've lost the opportunity to do something with that money. So there's really a cost, an interest cost, but not necessarily an interest payment. And so, that's something that we have to really get a grasp of, is that just because we're saving cash and then we pay for that money is now directed towards the car company or the whoever we're buying the car from. The money's flowed away from our institution, away from us. So think about that again just a second. Where's the money flowing to? The money's flowing to some other institution. It's flowing away from us. Now, we got something for it. We got a car, but what's the cost of that? And so then what do we have to do? We have to refill the tank. And so we put the money back in. Are we paying back with principal and interest and lost opportunity money, or lost money that we could have had we had a chance to invest it somewhere else? I think people get opportunity cost. They throw that out there. So we hear that in the financial channels, but we really don't understand what that means. Or maybe we understand what it means, but I just want to put it in context. It's like, that's the opportunity. That's the possibility that you could earn something even greater had you not spent the money on that car. Now, that's typically what most people will think about. And I just want you to imagine a better way to do this. Sit back and think about, well, if either one of those scenarios, the bank wins, right? If I borrow money from the bank, what do I have to pay them? I have to pay them interest. If I save my money in the bank before I make that purchase, how does the bank win there? They're going to take my money that I'm saving and lend it out to 9 or 10 different people almost immediately. And so they're paying me a little bit of interest, but they're making 10 times, 30 times, 100 times that amount of money. So either way, the bank is happy if you want to save your money and then make a purchase, or if you want to borrow the money that they're creating out of thin air sometimes. But if you want to borrow that money, they're still making interest because they're still making money because they're charging you interest, because now you're still within their system. And this is where Nelson, in his book, just the true genius of it comes into play. He just said, why not have money flow to an institution that you own and control? And that's really where the idea of this, I call it the Borth Family Bank. You can call it whatever you want, but think about this from the standpoint of, you want that money to flow to an institution that you own and control. So therefore, who's going to win? You're taking it out of the banks. You're not buying the owners of Wells Fargo. You're not buying the owners of the bank, their kids' college education. You're buying your own college education. And let's put this in just a real simple example that I discovered I just really was driven home the other day. So I have a hedge out in front of my house, and it needed to be trimmed, and this thing grows like crazy. Anybody that knows me, hears me talk about this thing, it will grow 3 feet, 4 feet in a summer if we let it. It's absolutely craziest growing hedge. It's gorgeous, it's beautiful, but it needs a lot of work. So I typically if I don't find time, I have to hire somebody to do that. Now, is it worth it? The cost of acquisition, we can have a different podcast, a different discussion around that, but absolutely is worth having somebody else do it. But the problem is when I have somebody else do it, the money flows out of our system, flows away from us. Now, think about it from this standpoint. What if there's a way for the money never to leave our system? And just a good example of this would be, I had my son the last couple times. I said, Josh, I'll pay you to go out there and trim that hedge and to do the job I was paying somebody else. So now I'm paying him. Those dollars I would have paid someone else. Think about that from just a money perspective. Not so much the job and paying for my son, but just keeping it into a system. When I paid him, I felt fabulous because now I said, that money's staying within our family. Much better. It's going to go to help him. It's going to go to have him grow whatever he wants to grow his banking system as well. So he's going to take that money, he's going to put it in his policy. But think about that strength of that. Now the money perpetually stays within our system. And I know, is it scalable? Is it forever that I can still continue to pay him to do those things? Probably not. He's going to go off to find a job or a career or whatever it might be that he wants to do. But the point, that's just a great example of having money stay within your system versus paying it out. And the feeling I got was, this is fabulous because now it goes to him, right? To an entity that I don't necessarily own and control, but an entity that's part of us. My banking system, my own private banking system, is the entity that we own and control. But it's the same thing in the thought process about paying my son to go do a job I was paying somebody else to. Because now I'm not giving profit to that outside entity. I'm keeping that profit within our family, within our own structure. That's the power of having money flow to an entity that you own and control versus having money flow away from you. And we see that time and time again. This is the concept that most people will miss about this idea. Now, from that standpoint, what does that mean? Is that I have a cost of acquisition. I had to buy a new hedge trimmer. I had to go out and teach him how to do it, so there's a bit of a cost to it. But once he gets up and running, now he's coming back to me and says, Dad, can I clean this thing up once a month versus twice a summer? I'm like, absolutely. Now the thing is up and running. We've acquired all the equipment. We've acquired the skills in order to do it. And now it's much easier for him. And it's also more profitable. He takes a lot less time. He does a much better job. And I'm glad to pay him the dollars to do those things versus paying somebody else, because now that money stays within our system. So think about that from the standpoint of your money. It's not about interest rate. It's not about anything else. It's just really about having money redirected to an entity that you own and control. From the banking perspective, from the idea of we're going to keep money in our own system, that's the whole thing. Is like, again, we were taught that we either we finance a car or we save up and we spend our money, but the bank always gets your money. Well, let's change that equation. How about if we make Wade Borth or the Borth Family Bank get the money? It's still going to cost us the same for the car. That's never going to change. That money's going to flow away, but we're accounting for it. We're going to make the same payments we're going to make to Wells Fargo, but it's back to our own entity. So therefore, we've cut them out of the equation. That's the real beauty about what Nelson was talking about. You're going to be the one that's in control. If you're not in the one if you can't control the financing, if you have to ask somebody else permission for financing, then you truly in control of your business. Are you truly in control of your family and your household? So think about that from your equation. When you start paying your kids to do a job that you'd have paid somebody else to do, and you're paying the same amount, quite frankly, even pay them more. Why not? It's staying within your system. And then that's the real strength. And when you start to understand that, you'll start to really understand what Nelson was talking about when he says, have money directed, the flow of money directed to an entity that you own and control. So just imagine, sit back and imagine, close your eyes. How many things do you pay for that the money flows out of your system into somebody else's? How much of your money flows into the Wells Fargos or the Chases or Bank of America, whoever it might be? Are those companies have the same values? Are they in line with what you believe in? My guess is probably not. But we have our money flow there. And we let them control and dictate if we're going to be successful or not, or what we can do with our dollars. Versus saying, let's cut them out. Let's put somebody else in that place. But that doesn't start until you start. You have to beat Parkinson's law, right? So we have to learn to save. We have to save. What is that amount that you need to save, right? We talk here all the time. We talk about you need to save anywhere between 10 and 30% of your income. Because once you have a pool of money, then you can start making those decisions. But you don't create a pool of money by using somebody else's dollars. You have to start using your own dollars, create your own pool of money. Because really, if you think about it, this is a business that you're in. You're in the banking business if you know it or not. You can choose to give it away to somebody else, or you can choose to keep it and control it and understand it and control it. And now you have an entity that money flows to your entity versus flowing to Wells Fargo. Give that some thought. We'll talk soon. Thank you. If you're enjoying this podcast or know anyone else that might be interested, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and please leave a review. This will help this podcast reach and help more people by ranking higher in searches and ultimately help more people get out of financial bondage. And don't be afraid to share this podcast with your friends and family, as we can be easily found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.